And kickstarting our first session is Dodie Ainslie, and she comes with over 20 years of educational experience and is currently the Technology Integration Specialist at Broome-Tioga BOCES in upstate New York. She's a Google Certified Trainer, an ISTE Certified Educator, and CAMI Hero. And currently her focus is using instructional tech to create meaningful learning experiences regardless of circumstantial barriers. Today, Dodie will be showing us some of the best ways that she has found to enable collaboration between students, educators, and peers in the remote environment, and how CAMI can be utilized to create meaningful learning interactions. Please note that if you have any questions for Dodie, please leave them in the live chat alongside your name, position, and school, and I'll select a few to ask in our Q&A at the end of the presentation. All right, off to you, Dodie.
All right, thanks. I'm really looking forward to this. This has been great. I have been using CAMI for quite a while. And so I'd like to share with you some of the things that I've noticed, some of the things that I work with teachers on. And I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. All right. I'd like to get started with things that we know. So let's get started there. So what do we know? We know a lot as educators. And one of the things that we know is that a collaborative, caring environment is key, right? That's really, we even knew that even more in the last couple months. We also know that connection is critical. And so we know that there's a plethora of information and videos and resources out there for us as teachers, right? But one of the things that we found out was the connection was so critical with our students. So we can pull videos from anywhere, right? Resource videos of people describing the math lesson. But one of the things we found in our region was that what kids wanted to see were their teachers doing those videos. They wanted to see from their teachers. They wanted to hear from their teachers. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, is allowing us to actually have those connections with kids, even if we are in a virtual environment. We also know that simply offering assignments, kind of like a rote recall assignments, really are not very engaging for kids, right? Today, I'm going to talk to you about CAMI can do that. Absolutely. You can put a PDF out there, have kids fill that PDF in, but is it an engaging PDF? Are you asking them to do engaging things? And we're going to talk about that today. It's kind of like stepping up that engagement, right? So the other thing that we know that is critical is that feedback loop. And today, when I talk collaboration, I'm talking about collaboration between student to student, as well as teacher to student. So that feedback loop is foundational. And when I give examples today, I just two notes to make note of. One is I work in districts that are Google districts. So I will be showing you Google Classroom integration. When I say Google Classroom, you can probably just go ahead and substitute Schoology or Canvas. They have great integrations as well. The other thing I want to note is some of you that are watching right now are already started. You're in the middle of your term in school, so you've already gone back to school, whatever that looks like. Some of you are looking at starting next week. Some of you are looking at starting back at school in the fall, right? We're all in kind of different places around the world. What I'm going to share with you today is just good tech integration, right? So the idea is that if you're face-to-face with kids, this is just great integration, tech integration tools that you can use in your classroom. If you are a hybrid, these will be perfect for you to use. And if you are fully virtual, these will be perfect. So no matter what you are in your position in your district with your kids, these collaboration tools will work for you. All right. So the outcomes today are obviously, let's talk about online collaboration. Let's talk about that feedback loop and developing those skills. And we're also going to talk about how CAMI can be used as a whiteboard. So we talked a little bit about this before with CAMI. I like to use the stair analogy because, as I said before, you can get CAMI and you can just throw any PDF worksheet that you have up there, you can have a nice digital workflow for your kids, and they will be able to complete it, and it will be a beautiful digital workflow. That's great. And caveat here, not all worksheets are created equal, right? So we realize as teachers that there are some worksheets that are basically just rote recall skill, and then there are others that ask students to do more application. So as we go up the stairwell, we want to think about that, right? Let's step it up. Today, we're going to talk about student-to-student collaboration, using feedback with comments, audio, video, and screen capturing. We're going to talk about how you can, as a teacher, have that feedback loop so that you can actually be collaborating with kids digitally, going back and forth and helping each other learn. So that's kind of where we're heading today with Cami. This is really just shows the basic features, and I'm not going to obviously get into this today, but I just want to note when we're looking at Cami, the left-hand side is pretty much the annotation comment features, and we're going to be living in the comment features today. On the right-hand side is more global stuff, right? So we're going to really be looking at the left-hand side and talking about those features today. So before we get started with examples, and I'm going to show you a lot of different content area examples today, how do we create this collaborative climate, right? So the idea is, how does this work with kids? Before you do anything, you need to make sure that you establish a climate that's going to foster that collaboration, right? This involves right off the bat, step-by-step student parent tutorials that, you know, we talk about in the regular classroom or physical face-to-face classroom about procedures and routines, critical. Beginning of the year, get those procedures and routines in place. It's the same thing digitally, right? Procedures and routines. The last 4 months, we didn't really have time to like have those established, not all of us, right? So we were struggling to get those in place once we all went virtual. Well, now we have time. We can like say, okay, what did we learn from the last 3-4 months? And how can we set up these tutorials and step-by-step procedures for our kids? So that includes specific directions, explicit expectations for our students. And today we're going to talk about peer-to-peer feedback. And I want to be very clear with this. We don't just pair up kids and say, give feedback, right? Of course not. You know, we know that as teachers. We want to make sure that we give specific criteria. And in order for that experience for kids to be collaborative, we need to make sure that we give those specific criteria for kids. What are you exactly giving feedback on, right? Very important. And then as a teacher, I'm modeling appropriate, specific, and helpful feedback. I'm going in there and not just saying to them, good job, great, love it, right? I'm giving them specific feedback as to what I liked about it and what they could kind of maybe improve, right? So that students see that feedback, they get those pieces, and then they can give feedback to their peers. So this is what really kind of remotely, even face-to-face, wherever, you've got to have these things in place in order for it to be successful, right? What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to jump right into Cami and show you some examples. You will get a link to this slide presentation, and the slide presentation will take you through each one of these examples to give you an idea. But I don't want to dwell in the slideshow. I want to really get you right into Cami and show you some examples. So we're going to start with feedback, right? Remember, we talked about collaboration and feedback. So I'm in my Cami Connect 2020 class that I made for this presentation. And I'm as a teacher in here, right? So I'm going to actually go to my classwork. I'm going to start with a music example. I'm going to hopefully hit most of the subjects today, most of the content. There's a couple I couldn't get in, but I'm going to start with music. So let's do this, name those notes and sing a song. All right, I'm going to actually go and I'm going to open up. Open it right with Cami. And this is an actual assignment that I created. It could be a very simple assignment, right? Just label the notes below and circle the half notes. This is an older folk song, American folk song.
But I tried to kind of step it up a little bit. And I said, you know what, instead of just doing that, I want you to sing the notes. Just that more of an application. Can they identify the notes, and then can they sing the notes, right? I also, in Kami, you can add audio directions. So I went ahead and added some audio directions.
Here's a challenge for you. The directions here are to label the notes below, which
you can kind of get a feel for that. So the students will open this up, and they will actually listen to the directions. And I'm actually going to go back to my class. Let me get out of here. I'm going to take you back to here because I want to show you an actual student's work. So Piper, one of my students, has actually completed this and handed it in, right? So again, from a student standpoint, they open it up with Kami. They go ahead and they annotate it. And in this case, I'm a teacher and I'm looking at the student handed in work. I actually return this to her because I know she can do better, right? So I actually am able to go ahead, and here's my directions. I went in and I actually made, or she actually went in and she actually did the singing, right? I won't play that for you, but she did her singing. And then I actually went in and listened to her singing. Saw some problems there with it. She can do better. I know she can. I think she rushed through this maybe. And so I made notes here. I said, go ahead and check. So up here, I said, check the notes. She's got F sharp here correctly, but later on she does have some issues. And then I also told her, you know, can you go ahead and make these changes? And I returned it to her. Again, I'm collaborating as a teacher with her. I could have Piper just have handed it in and said, oh, you get 2 out of 4. You didn't, there were things you messed up. But that's not going to grow her as a learner. So what I want her to do is go back through and specifically look at her notes. And then I want her to try to do the singing again. So again, I'm collaborating back and forth with Piper. And hopefully she's going to do better when she hands that back in. So that's a music example, right? Let me go to a wellness example. Again, I'm coming in as a teacher. I'm in Google Classroom. Here's my wellness example. And I'm actually going to show you one that was handed in. All right, so actually I graded this already and he got full credit, but I want to show you Henry's. So here is Henry's. In this assignment, what I asked my students to do is to identify stressors in their life, because we know that it's not just about academics, but it's also about social emotional. And it's now more than ever, although honestly, it's always been about social emotional. Our kids have to feel safe. They have to have strategies to help them before they can even open up to learning. We know that as teachers. So in this case, this is managing my stress. And so I assigned this to my students. They were supposed to kind of keep track of stressors in their life, techniques that they used, and then what worked and what didn't, right? So that's the point here. And then I said as a bonus, I want you to reflect on your assignment. Now Henry did reflect on his assignment, and he did note that in this last one, he had a hard time, right? It didn't work right away. He tried a breathing activity. It wasn't really working well. So here again, I'm collaborating. We're in a virtual environment. I don't see Henry. He doesn't come into me. I don't see him face to face. But I want to give him some other strategies. So what I did was I added a video comment. And in this case, I'll play it a little bit.
Hey, Henry, I love how you did this, and I love how you worked on trying to use the breath. You did a great job. I noticed in your last one you had a hard time, so it took a while to calm down. So I'm going to give you a couple other examples, all right? Some other strategies to use.
So as you can see, I was able to go in there and put a video in there so he can actually hear my voice, see my voice, and he'll be able to actually work on a new strategy to help him relax. Again, I'm collaborating with him. I'm helping him. I'm hoping that he will be able to pick another strategy. So that's an example of managing stress. All right, so there's a wellness example. Let me go back, and I'm actually going to go to a science example. All right, let me go to a science example here. try to hit all of them. Here's an example of parts of a flower, all right? And I'm going to go to Piper. Piper is going to be, she actually filled this in. This is a quiz that I gave out. Let's see what we got here. Again, we talked about this before. You can put out any PDF and have it annotating. In this case, I've asked her to label all the parts of a flower, but then I wanted a little more information. I've asked them to tell me exactly how seeds are produced when a bee comes by and gets pollen, right? And so Piper did that. But Piper, again, I think she rushed through this, right? So I actually added comments and sent it back to her. So in these comments I added.
This is absolutely true, Piper. Great job. But I need you to add what happens between when the bee comes and gets the pollen and then goes to another flower and the seeds are produced. So you've got a whole gap in there between the pollen.
You get the idea here. So the point is that you can, again, give feedback, return it, have them work on it, right? Okay, so there's an example of a science example. All right, let's move on to another one. World language, how about that? Let's do some world language here. All right. I love using Kami for world language teachers because what better way to have students actually hand in their voice, like actually reading. So in this case, this is a French passage, and I pushed this out to the students. And what I'm basically doing is I'm asking them to read this out loud to themselves, and then the second read, I want them to read but record themselves, whether it's a video or audio, it doesn't really matter, right? By the way, the recordings are limited to 5 minutes, but you can do as many recordings as you want. So I've noted that in the directions here. If it's longer than 5 minutes, no worries, just do another one, right? So they're going to go ahead and they're going to read through this. Me, again, as a teacher, I'm going to get this back. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to see if they are pronouncing everything, easy for me to say, pronouncing everything correctly. I'm going to be able to then give them feedback, again, audio or video, and say, all right, let's try this again. Can you go ahead and repeat the first 2 lines because there were some issues there. I just want to hear you do it again, right? So I can give them feedback. Again, just a great way to offer feedback for kids. All right, there's my foreign language, or I'm sorry, world language example. All right, let's move on to screen capturing. So we talked a lot about feedback between the teacher and the student, but let's talk a little bit about using the screen capture tool, which is super powerful. So I'm going to go into a math example. I'm going to go into view assignment. All right, so here's a math example. Let me open this up and show you what it looks like. So I have this amazing person. I know a lot of amazing teachers. I'm in awe every day at the teachers that I work with. Mrs. Russell helped me out with this one. And so this is an example of, say I have this math worksheet that I need them to do, but in a normal classroom, I would probably demonstrate. I would do some concept development and do a demonstration. I would try to do that I do, we do, you do kind of thing. So I would demonstrate, then I would have the kids working together, and then I would have them do it individually to see if they got it, right? Well, okay, I'm in a virtual classroom. I can't do that. Well, I can do it through Kami. So what I can do is I can actually do a screen capture of the first one I do and explain it, and then they can go from there. So let me go ahead and show you this.
Let's do problem 1A together. Lena's family visits Little Tree Orchard. Use the RTW process to solve the problems about Lena's visit to the orchard.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Well, we could draw a tape diagram. Do we know the whole or do we know the parts? Well, we know the parts. We know they have 2 adult tickets and 2 child tickets. So let's get a rectangle and we'll draw our tape diagram. We know that the adult tickets are a little bit more, so we'll make those boxes a little bit bigger. I'm doing my best to keep them about the same size since they are both the same amount, $7. So in each box, I will label $7. And I'm also going to label underneath adult, so that I remember that those sevens represent the adult ticket.
I'm going to go ahead a little more.
I need to put my unknown somewhere in my tape diagram. Well, what am I trying to find? I'm trying to find the total, the whole thing. So I'm going to label the whole thing, the tape diagram, with a letter, like my directions say. And I think I'll use the letter H for hayride. So now
So you can get a feel for that. This idea, I think, is amazing, right? The idea that we can actually put in a screen capture showing that demonstration step by step. And then the next part of the directions is, okay, now you saw me do it, now you do it, right? So they would do B and C, right? I could have them do that, and then they could hand it in. The beauty of this is I could have them do the screen capturing too. So I could say to them, I want you to do B, but I want you to also go to your comments and make sure that you select screen capture. And I want you to think aloud as you do it, just like I just did. So then I, as the teacher, can hear what's the thinking, what's that mathematical thinking that the child is doing. And if they do it right, or what strategy they use, or maybe they're having some problems and I know exactly where it kind of fell off, right? I know exactly what the misconception might be. So again, I could return it to that student and say, thank you for doing this, this is great. Steps 1, 2, and 3, perfect. I noticed when you got to step 4, you did X, whatever. That's a common mistake. Let me show you how to fix that. You know, so again, it's that back and forth. I think that's critical, and I think the screen capture is perfect, embedded right in it. I mean, it's genius for sure. Love it. All right, so that's an example of the screen capture, which I think is really, really cool. I want to talk a little bit about student-to-student collaboration now. So again, very powerful for student-to-student collaboration. Let's go back, and I want to show you 2 ways to do it. All right, so let me make sure I get this straight. Let's go here first. All right, so I'm using a 9th grade example, a short story called Death by Scrabble by Charlie Fish. And so the first example, this is how I set it up. All right, so this is student-to-student collaboration, right? What I ended up doing as a teacher in Google Classroom, and you can do this in Canvas or in Schoology, is I took the document, the Death by Scrabble, the short story, and I pushed it out to 2 students so they got the same copy so that they're in the same document, okay? In order to do this correctly, if you have 20 students and you're pairing them up, you'll need 10 of these saved. And so you would have, you know, in this case, Henry and Piper, they have a copy to themselves. Then the next 2 students have their own copy, right? So you would have to have 10 copies of them. So everybody gets a copy to share. And what I ended up doing was I ended up putting it out to the 2 students. So in this case, we've got one document that they're both sharing. All right, so let me show you how this looks. All right, it's coming up here. In this assignment, what I asked them to do, they both the same document, they're in both the same document. I said, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and I want you to annotate. So in this case, Henry's yellow, Piper is green. They go ahead and they've both been in here, you can tell. I know exactly who, this is Piper, I know exactly who annotated what. As a teacher, I love this because I know exactly that Henry did this, right? So that's awesome. They annotated through. They added questions or things or comments. They annotated the story. So Piper came in here, says, sounds like he leads a boring life. I wonder why they chose to play Scrabble since it doesn't sound like he likes it. So she's kind of annotating, Henry's annotating, And then the goal here is that together, in this case, it's collaboration. I want them to rewrite the story, the ending of the story together, okay? Same story together. Or I gave an option. I said, listen, if you want to each change the ending of the story, you can, all right? If they don't want, if they have two different ideas, that's fine, whatever. So anyway, I got them going down here. We've got at the end, so each one of them has been in there for the first time. But now Henry's saying, hey, Piper, what if we change these letters and make it spell something else besides quake? Then go from there. So he's kind of starting the process of the collaboration. He's saying, hey, Piper, what if we do this? Now, Piper still hasn't come in to answer that, but Piper would come in, Piper will add a reply and say, yep, let's do that. And then they'll start writing their answer, all right, their ending. Again, this is one way of collaborating where they're in the same document, right? They're working off the same document, right? But there's other ways of doing it. So let's go into those other ways. Here's another way of doing it. And actually for this one, you know what? I'm going to go into Piper's account. Here we go. All right, so we're in Piper's account now. And Piper is going to do collaboration. And this is along the same lines as before. We're going to rewrite the ending. So I'm a student now in Google Classroom. I'm Piper. I'm going to view my assignment. Here's my assignment. I've got a document here that I need to see. And I also have my paper here. Now, in this collaboration, every student gets their own copy. I like this because it's easier for me as a teacher, because each student will then return or hand in their own piece, and then I can grade that piece, right? So, or give feedback on that piece. So I like doing this instead. And remember, this is a 9th grade example, but I've seen this done with classes 2nd, 3rd grade. Again, procedures and routines has to do with that. Really being clear on what is important. So in this case, here's the process. They each get their own copy of the story. All right. And then, so I'm going to actually be Piper. Let me open it up for you so you can see. I'm getting that authorization just because I'm in an incognito window, just as a heads up. Once students authorize Cami the first time with their within Google Drive and within Google Classroom, they don't have to do it again, so it doesn't come up every time, just the first time. So just as an FYI. All right, so here I am, I'm Piper. I have my own copy, but notice the same thing. I'm asking them to do the same thing. I'm asking them to annotate, to highlight, and then when they're done, when she's done, what I'm asking her to do is to rewrite the ending. Once she's done rewriting the ending, then she's going to, and this is all in the directions, again, procedures and routines, getting them clear. You're going to go ahead and do a shared document. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this link. So I'm going to say anyone with the link can be an editor, because again, I'm Piper. I want someone to go in and check my work. So I'm going to copy this link, and then in my assignment, go back to the assignment. I'm going to open up this peer-to-peer feedback. And here I am going to add my link. So I'm going to put my link here. So I'm Piper, I'm adding my link so that Henry, who is my peer feedback partner, can go in and click on this link. When Henry goes in, he's going to be able to make notes. I also put in here, by the way, that criteria for peer-to-peer feedback, right? So this is super important. Remember we said, I might, as a teacher, be scoring this rewrite of an ending on like 5 things, but I really only want the peer to go in and do 2 things. Does the ending involve a twist or surprise ending that you may not have seen coming? And did the ending align with the story as the plot was progressing? Those are the 2 things I want Henry to go in and do. So with Piper, I want you just to see the progress of this, right? Here I am as Piper. Piper went in, she rewrote the ending. Here's Piper, she's got her annotations. Henry then went in using that link and actually started answering or putting other questions to Piper. And then at the bottom, you'll see here, all right, so Henry says, wow, I love this ending. It definitely followed the format of the short story, which was a good twist at the end that I didn't see coming. So Henry is saying, wow, this is great. But again, we're looking at growth, right? And we've modeled and we've shown students how to do this. So how can we make our peer do better? So Henry then says, I wonder if you could add something here where she leaves the house. Like maybe she says, game over, or puts a tile in front of him and says, game over, double points for me. Just something to kind of make it a little bit more interesting, right? So that's his contribution, right? So now as Piper, I'm in here and I'm going, hey, that's not a bad idea. I'm going to go ahead and say she comes out of the bedroom, and I'm going to click here into my document, and I'm going to write, and she puts a tile in front of him and says game over, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully take some good feedback. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it in. And in this case, I'm just going to go right up here when I'm done, and I'm going to turn it in. I always encourage students to save now, just to make sure. But when you turn it in, it does save. So that's really cool. All right. So that's another way of collaborating. And I have to tell you, I know there's some steps involved, but again, it's about procedures and routines. And I've heard back from teachers that using peer-to-peer feedback like this way and working on getting that link, they really get good at it. So I think you're going to find that it's going to work really well for you. So that's another way, one way of doing some really good collaboration. All right, so we talked about, we have one more collaboration part to do, and then I'm going to get into the whiteboard briefly. I want to do another science example because it's pretty cool. Here's the thing, we've heard a lot about interactive notebooks, right? Interactive science notebooks, digitally interactive books, collaborative journals. Here's an example of a way to collaborate and have an interactive journal for students with Cami. Let me go in here, view assignment. I think I'm going to show Henry's here because he's in progress. Yep, let me do that. All right, so here's how did I prep this? Basically, I went into Google Slides and I created a journal. And in our region, in the state that I live in Newark, our science curriculum is based on exploration and phenomena and watching something happen and then asking a lot of questions and then investigating those questions, right? It's about wonder. And so in this case, what I ended up doing was I created this journal. And again, I created it in Google Slides. And then I brought it into Cami. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, right? You're saying, all right, this is great, but why not just keep it in slides, push it out through Google Classroom as a copy for each, and just do it in slides? Absolutely, you could do that for sure. But again, I always say it comes back to purpose, right? And simplicity, and keeping things as simple as possible. In this case, if I had a journal where all they did was, in this first case, they're looking at this picture and they're saying, what do you wonder? This is third grade, by the way. And so Henry went in and just started throwing out questions. What is happening? Is this actual? Is it true? And this is like the first part of this phenomena, right? So the idea is, if it's just simply adding text, Google Slides would work perfect, right? It'd be great, super. But it's not just about that. In this one, later on, I go down here to this next phenomenon, which is the goldenrod golf. Here, I want Henry to draw the life cycle of a goldenrod golf fly. And so in Cami, this is perfect. This is why I do it in Cami, because he can, in Cami, has a drawing tool and can change colors and can then annotate it, or draw it, but then can also put the text and label it, and can do a really nice job of it. of showing this life cycle. I like it. I like using Kami for this reason. Okay. I will tell you that, and some of you are probably saying, well, I use Google Drawing, and I just have them embed the Google Drawing in the Google Slides. Yeah, you can do that. You absolutely can do that. It's just one more step, right? So I like to be simple and keep it into one document in one easy way. I don't want students to have to then, okay, go to Google Drawing and insert a Google Drawing, and then, you know, I don't want to have to worry about that. So I do it right in Kami, and it's just beautiful. I love it. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is Kami is that, again, I can see the progress. So we know that this science unit is probably going to last, about probably a couple weeks maybe, right? Because they're going through and exploring. I can go in and I can progress, and I can go ahead and I can add all sorts of, right? Ooh, there you go. All right, I've been recording myself out. This is even better. I can go ahead and add comments to Henry and say, hey, Henry, you know, I like how you're thinking. In this case up here, I actually made a note for him to say, oh, you need these resources. I'm going to add them to Google Classroom. So we're going to add them for you. So again, I can go in and see the progress. I want them to grapple a little bit. I want them to really be like, persevere through some of these questions, but I also want to make sure that they're not frustrated, right? So again, I can check progress, and I think that is the beauty of using Kami in this instance. All right, so that was the science example. I did want to show you how to use Kami and wrap up with whiteboard. How to use it as a whiteboard. I know during the keynote there were some questions about, oh, I didn't realize you could use it as a whiteboard. You could absolutely use Kami as a whiteboard. As a matter of fact, the easiest way on the fly to use Kami as a whiteboard is to go right up to the Kami extension. And on the Kami extension, you're just going to go ahead right to blank page. And I'm just going to open up a blank page. I can do line, I can do grid, I can do a music, which is awesome. And so I can go, I'm just going to do blank, right? And so say I'm a math teacher, on the fly, I need a whiteboard, whether I'm in class with the kids and I want to project it off a tablet, or whether I'm in a hybrid situation and I'm maybe meeting with them in Zoom or a Google Meet or somewhere. And then I can go ahead and I can just do, you know, whatever. I'm not going to. So anyway, the point is that I can use this. It will always ask you to save. I'm not going to save this at this point, but you can absolutely save everything and then have that for the students. So that's an easy way of using the whiteboard. But there's another way of using the whiteboard that's really cool. Let me show you that. If I'm meeting with my students, say I'm an AIS teacher. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So say I'm an AIS teacher and I'm meeting with my students online. I'm going to be either in like maybe Google Meet or Zoom or another platform. I make this available on Google Classroom so they can all open this up. I set the permissions so that everybody can edit this, okay, that I'm going to be working with that day. And then I'm sharing my screen in Zoom with them or whatever, and I'm going ahead and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the I do. Here's my I do, right? That gradual release of responsibility. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, okay, we're working on place value today. Let's take 243 and let's break it down, all right, using a number bond. So I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to say there's 200, there's 40, 4 tens, and there's 3 ones. And I'm going to go ahead and break it up, do that lesson. And then I'm going to say, okay, now we are going to do the next one. Again, I'm still sharing, right? And I'm going to, okay, the next one is 605, 605. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to break that up. And I'm going to ask the students, and they're going to tell me how many hundreds, how many tens, how many fives. In this case, actually, we're not going to do 4 tens because there's no tens there. Then I'm going to direct them to open this up from Google Classroom. Now they're going to be in this document, and I'm going to say, all right, Now, each student, Johnny, you do this one. Beirut, you do this one. And I'm going to be sitting there watching as they do it. So I'm going to actually see their thought process. If I have a large group, I could put them in breakout rooms or whatever, right? And I could then move them around and have them working together on this same document. That works out great. I could assign them, I could go ahead and after they're done with that and we go over it, I could go ahead and assign them different numbers or whatever. Again, same document that they're all working in, and I'm using it as a whiteboard. And then I can save it, and then I can post it, and they have the notes from that day. So a lot of great ways of using it as a whiteboard, again, in whatever environment that you're in. All right. Those are my examples. I do want to point out a couple more things on the slideshow, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So on the slideshow that you're going to get a link for, it goes through everything that I just showed. So you can go ahead and you can see all those different examples that I showed. Also on here, there'll be some notes. I think most of these I kind of went over, so I'm not going to bore you and read through it again. I do want to make a note that we talked about it integrating with Google Classroom, Schoology, and Canvas. If you do not have an LMS, you can use Kami outside of an LMS, and it works really well. And I just pointed out that when you save things out of Kami, you just want to flatten those annotations. And what that means is in Kami, you've got your PDF, you've got your annotations on top, and when you're saving it outside of Kami and you flatten them, they literally flatten and they fuse together. So that's kind of a simple way of thinking about that. As mentioned all day through all of the presenters, Kami has some amazing resources. They have a great Kami handbook that I love to use and refer people to. They have a Facebook page, they have a YouTube channel, and a blog. Please make sure you check those out if you have any questions. And I will end with my contact information is on the slideshow as well if you need to contact me for any reason. I have included on this slide the folder to my assignment. So if you saw an assignment that you thought, that's kind of cool, you can go ahead and click on this folder and you can go ahead and see the assignment there. I try to put all of them in there. So Marie, I'm going to, at this point, stop my share and we're going to open it up to some questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Dodie. That was wonderful, and hopefully everyone had a chance to follow along and get an image of what you, how people use Kami and how someone like you uses it in a real classroom. We did get some questions. I'm sorry I won't be able to go over all of them, but we got one question from Bridget O. Hagnon, I believe. And she had a question that you did cover, but I just wanted to repeat it again. How long can the audio or video comments be?
Right, so 5 minutes for each one, but you can do as many as you want. And one of the strategies that I always make sure that I tell students is if they have different ones that go to different parts of the Kami assignment, make sure that you can, once you click on an area, you can actually change the dot color. So what I try to give them the information is, if it's like the intro, click on that, make that green, and then do your comments so that you can select it and you can easily see which comments for what, but 5 minutes, but unlimited amount.
Yeah, so it's almost like a key that you've created where this type of color goes with this type of comment.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
And we had a question from Kirby Laurel Boychuk Ridley wanting to know about annotating images. And so maybe you could speak about that. How do you find images? How do you import them? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so it can't, with Kami on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a little image icon. You can bring any images in you want. This works really great. I didn't show this, but what a great idea, like the VT visual thinking strategies. You could actually bring in an image and have people, like maybe it's an historical image that you want them to annotate and know what do they see, what do they know, what do they think they know, what's happening in this image, right? And they can easily annotate on it for sure, whether it's a text box or drawing tool. Any of that would work really perfectly. And you as the teacher could bring it in, but you could also have students bring it in. I've seen where teachers have asked students to, one of the jobs is, illustrate this story, or go ahead and bring in a historical art piece that would fit in this historical period or whatever. So they can bring them in as well. Yep.
Okay. And I got kind of a global question that lots of people had, which is Jill V said, if I have, a huge class, maybe I have over 100 students, how do you find time to create meaningful comments and do all this feedback that Cami supports?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm telling you, I just finished doing an online class for some amazing educators in this region. There were 80 of them. There were 3 of us facilitating. And one of the things we said from the get-go is, if we're going to do this right, we need to model good feedback, right? So we can't just, we have to walk the walk, right? So we spent a lot of time giving that feedback. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, how does that look? I think as a teacher, you have to decide what is it that needs feedback, and you need to make sure you give feedback for that completely, right? And you need to go all out. I taught middle school. I had 138 one year. I had 120 the next year. I get it. I understand that. I was an English teacher, so I had a lot to read. I had a lot to do. I think in a virtual environment, you set limits, but you also say, you decide what's the biggest bang for my buck, right? Mm-hmm. So you decide, if I really want them to get a lot out of this, then that's the one I focus on. That's the one I give the feedback for. And so, yes, it's hard. Teaching's hard. And I think that the other thing I want to point out is, it's been my experience that as a teacher, especially an English teacher, that a lot of times you see a lot of the same issues percolating up, right? So you're like, oh, they all need this. So what I would do is, yes, give feedback to as many as I could, but if I saw something happening over and over again, then I would make a list of that. And then when we did our next online meeting, or when we got together, I'd say, listen, this is one of the things that a lot of you were having some challenges with. Let's talk about it. And so maybe they wouldn't get individual comments for that, but I would address all of them. And so again, I think that's key. But if someone else can think of better, good for you. But it takes a lot to be a good teacher, and we all know that. And we do our best. And I always tell teachers, don't kick yourself over it, right? Don't be so critical of yourself. You do the best you can. We're all doing the best we can. We'll get through this together, but don't be too hard on yourself, right?
Yes, especially going into this very unorthodox season that we're all in. That's great advice. I had a question from a couple of different people regarding how Cami saves and how students can save their work. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, so I will tell you that prior to the closure, it saved every 3 seconds or so, right? So it was constantly saving on the fly. And I will tell you that Cami's been doing an amazing job trying to keep up with everybody that has come on board with Cami. I think I read somewhere, and I'm sure that Henji will be able to clarify this later, but I think it was something like 250% increase in users of Cami in the last 4 months. That's huge. It speaks to how wonderful Cami is and what it does for an online environment and how it helps. But with that comes growing pains, right? So what they ended up having to do this past year is they kind of took that saving down a little bit. And they made sure that what ended up happening was that it didn't save as much. And that's why what happened with my students is I told them, get in the habit of going and save now. And so I just got them into the habit of going and save now. And that really superly helped. But one of the things I noticed, and by the way, I brought this up when I was preparing for this, and they're basically saying that they're working on obviously getting it back to that. And I think it will get back to that, or more often saving on the fly. But what I did notice in the past couple weeks is that when the kids click on turn in, it automatically saved. So like I tell my kids, save now, then turn in. But what was happening is when they turned it in, it was saving. So I think that that's going to be a good solution to that, as long as they save before they exit out. So again, there were some glitches. It's growing pains. Bear with them. They're doing an amazing job. They're an amazing team. So I hope that helps.
Yes, that does. And I will say, yes, the growth has been staggering and exciting at CAMI over the past couple of months, where we're all on this ride together. I had someone in the past ask a question. I'm trying to go back and find it. And it was about the text to speech. Can you talk a little bit about how you've used text to speech in your experience? And also someone had a specific question about, can it start and can it stop? How does that function?
So stay tuned for another session, because I know that there's another session today on UDL, and they're going to be going through a lot of these features. I think that is another reason why I personally like CAMI, is the assistive tech and the features for all kids, accessibility for all kids. The text to speech is great. Remember, it requires for you to have a PDF that has text that can be recognized, the characters that can be recognized, i.e., if you bring in a document that is a picture of text, what will happen with CAMI, which is pretty cool, is it'll actually say, hey, I think there's text here. Do you want us to run OCR? And if you say yes, you'll want to always say yes if you want to use the text to speech, because then it will then recognize the characters. So yes, all you need to do is select it. And again, there's a session for that later today. So please make sure you're tuned into that, and just click the text to speech, and it will speak for you. And they have also dictation, which is voice typing, which is really cool too, which is again another super feature for students that need accessibility. Yeah,
absolutely. Someone had a question about how well does this work with algebra or math? I think it was Janice Burke who asked that in the past. Do you have any experience with that?
So it does have a full equation editor. It also, you can insert symbols as well. What we have found is the equation editor within text boxes works better for higher level math. But again, so as a math teacher, you know this because you've always found workarounds, because that's what you guys do. Do you teach students how to use an equation editor? Because sometimes that's a whole nother lesson. Or do you have students, if they have a touch device, do they just go ahead and use a stylus or use their finger and just go ahead and use that? So I guess it really depends on what type of math you're doing. Is it easy for them to use the equation editor? Yes. And as long as they know it. For you, it's super easy. You'll be fine with it. It'll be great. I guess it just depends. Do I have teachers in the high school that I work with using CAMI? Absolutely. Geometry, algebra, and they love it. So my math teachers are my biggest fans sometimes. So it definitely is. And by the way, face-to-face even so, because what they would do is project a whatever they were working on, the problem they were working on, they would actually have it open and have it projected so they could walk around the room and do it as they walk around the room, and it's projected or pushed out to students one-to-one. So that's been a really nice thing, nice feature.
Yeah, and on that note, I've had discussions with math teachers who say that when they're doing that, let's say you're in class or working remotely on a whiteboard, you can, as you're demonstrating the Pythagorean theorem for the first time, you can record your screen so that later on that day, when the student goes back to do homework or review the work, they can see your explanation in detail, step by step, because you've recorded their screen. So they're watching it live, and they can also watch it over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Tell me a little bit about your experience using the stylus with Cami. What has that experience been like?
So, I've always gone back and forth with like, do we get styluses for kids? Do they need them? Definitely touch screen. I think if you're looking as a district or as a organization to purchase Chromebooks or whatever devices you're using them on, you definitely need touch. I mean, there's no way around that for sure. I think it depends on kids. Like, some kids, even if you get them stylus, they're not going to use them. They're just going to use their finger. That's what they're used to, right? So I would say that just play around with styluses. You can get them really cheap now. Do you really need the cheap ones, or do you need the expensive ones? I know that there's a lot of states and countries that have standardized tests where they actually need to have a stylus. And I would say that my experience with that is that you need to go with the higher end in most of the platforms for them. But as far as Cami goes, any stylus will do. I mean, I bought a whole lot of real cheap ones, but I typically just use my fingers. So
I'm the same. I have a touch screen and a stylus, and most of the time I don't even use my touch screen. But for most purposes, when teachers or schools or districts ask, I tell them, we work on touch screens, and we also have plenty of schools and districts that don't have touch screens that use this as well. Mm-hmm. All right, so I have probably 2 more questions, and then we're going to be out of time. So tell me a little bit about how you use Cami with photographs. If you ever use it, if students ever upload photos with Cami, maybe using their phone. Do you have any experience there?
I know that there's been some art teachers that have used it with bringing in photos, and how I've seen, well, 2 ways of using it, I would just say. One is if you're doing any analysis of artwork, right? That's perfect. Have a student bring in the artwork, or you bring it in, and then they are actually annotating around the art piece, pointing out maybe features of the medium that was used, or features from the artist or the time period or whatever. The other thing that you could do is have students take pictures of their artwork in the virtual environment. We saw this a lot. I had this art teacher that did an amazing idea. She had the students create a sculpture with whatever they had available about their experience during the pandemic, during the closure. And so they created a sculpture, took a picture of it, and the idea there could be you could bring it into Cami, and then they could actually, again, annotate around it to say, this is why I picked this, what I picked. This is why I created it. These are the emotions that went into it. So they could actually do an interpretation of their own art. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so one last thing, and I'm going to shoot it back over to the Cami team. Some people were asking if there are tutorials on our YouTube channel, and I just want to say that there are. So anyone who feels like, wait, I know there's more, I want to go back and hear more about that, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, and you should find that there. And I want to thank you, Dodie, for this fantastic presentation. We all benefited so much from it, and thank you all for all your questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to them all. But on that, I'll shoot it back to the Cami team.
Thanks, everybody.